It started with a single note. Tucked under her door, the handwriting was messy, jagged, like it had been written in a hurry. "They're watching you." That was all it said. At first, Emily laughed it off, thinking it was just a prank. She had only recently moved into this old, creaky apartment, and the neighborhood was full of eccentric characters. But as the days passed, the notes kept coming, each more cryptic, each more unsettling than the last. Emily began to notice things, tiny details that hadn't seemed important before. The way the curtains fluttered ever so slightly when the window was shut tight. The sound of footsteps outside her apartment, even when no one was there. Every night, as she lay in bed, she could feel eyes on her, cold, relentless eyes. She thought she was imagining it, but the feeling never went away. Then came the second note. "You can't escape them." Her heart raced as she read it. The handwriting was no longer just messy. It was frantic, desperate. Someone, or something, was clearly watching her. The idea of moving crossed her mind. But that would mean leaving behind the only place she could afford. She couldn't afford to be paranoid. So she tried to push the fear aside and carried on with her routine. But that didn't stop the notes. Each morning, one would appear. "They're in the walls." The note was shoved deep under the door this time, stained with what looked like mud. She stared at the words in horror, her pulse quickening. Could someone have gotten into her apartment? She checked every corner, peered behind the furniture, but there was nothing. The walls were solid, silent. Yet every night, the feeling of being watched grew more intense. It wasn't just the sensation anymore. She could hear whispers, soft, unintelligible murmurs, coming from the walls. Days bled into nights, and Emily's once calm apartment became a suffocating trap. She was exhausted, drained by fear. But one thing was certain. She wasn't alone. It was on the fourth day when she found the final note. The notes never stop. They're part of you now. Chilled to the bone, Emily felt something shift deep inside her. The whispers had stopped, but now, her own handwriting, the same jagged scrawl, began appearing on scraps of paper around her apartment. They weren't her words. They weren't even thoughts she remembered having. But the notes were there, everywhere. She screamed. Her hand trembled as she reached for the phone to call for help. But the screen flickered, the words on it shifting, rearranging. "Help won't save you." Her breath caught in her throat as she looked up, her eyes meeting the blank wall across from her. And then she saw it, deep cracks forming in the plaster, stretching wider, revealing something dark, something moving just beneath the surface. The whispers returned, louder now, impossibly close. As the walls began to buckle inward, Emily felt the floor beneath her shift. She stumbled back, but it was too late. The apartment was closing in on her, the notes now swirling around her like a storm. She tried to scream, but her voice was drowned out by the laughter that echoed from every corner of the room. The next day, they found the apartment abandoned, the door left ajar. No one could explain what had happened to Emily, but the neighbors claimed to hear strange sounds, soft whispers, like someone scratching at the walls. The landlord found something that made his skin crawl. Beneath the floorboards, wedged into the cracks of the old wood, was a single note, written in the same frantic handwriting as before. "They are watching you now." Emily's story ended there, but the question remains, are the notes really gone? Or do they still linger, waiting for someone else to find them?